I hope you all see the presentation. If there's any problem, just let me know. So my name is Sébastien Croteau. I'm French. So English language is by definition my second language. So I'm sorry if sometime I stumble upon words, like we say in French. Pardon my French. I'm usually pretty good, but sometimes it might happen that I like what's the word for that. But I just hope that it's not going to be the case too much for this presentation. So, oh, so today we're talking about a little bit about me and a little bit about what I do, which mostly consists of extreme voices in video game. I want to start by thanking the Alt Network for the invitation, thanking all of you for actually making it this morning, because I know that for most of you guys it's the morning. For me, I'm in Montreal. It's EST time, so it's 1 p.m. So thank you for joining us. I assume most of you are from the California area, and I'm sure that today you are a little bit jealous of the weather in Montreal. It's minus 30 degrees. So I'm sure you will all love to be here today. So, like I said, my name is Sébastien Croteau. I'm actually a metal vocalist. I've started to sing in 1990, but I started in a band in 1991. And I'm also doing throat singing. I've actually learned throat singing in 1996. And I was lucky enough to study with people that are actually pretty knowledgeable in throat singing, like Tran Quan Hai, which is sadly passed away 2 years ago, but he was a world-renowned expert on throat singing. And a couple of other people. I was lucky enough also to train with Tibetan monks and Mongolian throat singer as well in Montreal. Well, after that, I started in 2005 my career in voice acting, like 18 years ago. And it's actually funny how it started because a friend of mine who knew that I was doing death metal growls and weird voices actually started to work at Ubisoft in Montreal. And they were looking for weird voices for one game specifically. And he asked me to come and meet the audio director. And I got to meet them. And you know, I didn't know that back then, but it took a couple of months for them to get back to me. And for me, I was like, oh my God, I failed my audition or I failed the meeting. Like and then they got back to me a few months after, went to the studio and did my first video game in 2005, which is Far Cry Instinct on Xbox, which was a while ago. Um, as I said, I'm mostly specialized in extreme voices, vocal stunt work, and also on sound creation for monster and creature. I've worked on a couple of video games during my career, and I voiced more than 200 characters. So yes, and for the past few years, I've been doing voice direction for a different project, and I'm teaching at the National Institute of Sound and Image in Montreal. It sounds fairly official, and it is. It is a training educational facility here in Montreal, and I basically teach three things. I teach vocal distortion to voice actors and actresses. I teach environmental sound, what some people would refer as ono, grunts, barks, and I teach monster and creature sound. And I've been doing that for a couple of years. And I've been a vocal coach also for 15 years, trained like hundreds of metal vocalists and voice actors and actresses to actually be able to perform vocal distortion and to do different things. And I'll get a little bit more into details later on. So this is a little visual of my career with picture from the time I did start doing those. So you can see I started to sing death metal in 1990. I barely had the long hair required to sing in a metal band, but yeah, I was doing my best to grow them back then. Started throat singing in 1996, voice acting 2005, and I forgot to say that at the beginning, but I'm the CEO of a company called the Monster Factory, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I started the Monster Factory in 2018, and we we have a world domination plan that we try to put in place since 2021. So again, this is a part of the creature that I was lucky enough to voice during the years. For those who know video game, you can recognize a couple of creature from Guardian of the Galaxy. You can most likely see the Hulk that I voice in Guardian of the Galaxy, the Nemesis that I voice in Dead by Daylight, also the leader of the Yaxil tribe in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, creature from Prince of Persia, etc. So this is me, folks. The Monster Factory. So this is actually our logo. As you know, when I was talking about the world domination plan, this is actually quite in the logo, as you can see. So what is the Monster Factory? Well, we actually do a couple of things. We do sound creation. And what I mean by sound creation, I mean that some clients that we have, mostly video game company and movie company, they come to us and they don't have any idea of the sound that their creature or monster should have in the game. So we can help them with that. So sound creation, of course, voice acting. We have a lot of vocal stunt performers, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about that later on. We do recording, meaning that depending on what the clients want, we rent studio here in Canada, in the States, or we rented studio in Japan and France and Australia and a couple of places. Of course, we rent professional voiceover studio, not music studio. That is quite different. We do localization, meaning that when we do the voices in French or English, I have a team in a couple of different places in the world that can actually provide the same kind of voice that we can do. We do sound design a little bit, but most of the time, our clients usually do it themselves. Like they have a sound design team and they take care of that. It happens a couple of times. And we do voiceover training also. So, and I'm sure you probably, most of you guessed it by now. What is the Monster Factory secret weapon? Apart from, being good looking. Well, it's actually metal vocalists and vocal stunt performers. Like, well, yeah, it's a little different now, right? So we have an international team, which consists of right now 105 metal vocalists, vocal stunt performer, scream artist, extreme vocal coaches, and voice actor. We are present in 15 countries. We can cover more than 10 different languages. And our plan is evil and we want to know. Sorry, I forgot to erase that part. So, Monster Factory, actually, when we launch, just to show you, this is a picture of us on the Thomson Reuters screen in Times Square, New York. I'm pretty sure this was the first time ever that extreme metal vocalists were featured on that screen. So yeah, when we did the announcement, it was actually announced there. So the first video game that we start to work on, and just to tell you, like I said, the Monster Factory was only born, if I can say that, in 2018. But before that, we did start, mostly me personally, to work on different video game. And what happened is over time, more and more video game company asked me, for example, if I had any friends. And of course, being a metal vocalist, we don't have any friends. No, I'm joking. We have a couple of friends. Sometimes they were asking me, like, they have, like, of course, like, people to do, the female voice, or, they were looking for other voice tone. So I was like, yeah, I have people that I know that I'm pretty sure could be good at doing that. So like I was saying, we started on Far Cry Instinct. And just to give you a little bit of behind the scene of that, that was my first video game. Okay. And for me, I was quite stressed about that because I was like, oh my God, it's big. Oh my God, it's big. Like I want to make sure that I would perform and that they would be happy about it. The only thing like I didn't think about was that we booked 2 sessions, 8 hours per day for 2 days straight. Just to tell you that the last day, actually at the end of the day, there was blood in my saliva. For me, I wasn't aware of how difficult that could be because, as a trained metal vocalist, I can sing for hours. I can, like when we record an album, most of the time we will scream for 6, 7 hours straight. So I was like, okay, this is, I'm going to be fine. But no, I wasn't that fine after that. And that's where actually I learned that 8 hours per day was a little bit too much. And then I did voices in Assassin's Creed 2. If you play the game and you poison someone with the actual poison blade, the sound that the character are doing while they choke on their mucus, this is me. And one of my friend, metal vocalist, Marie-Hélène Landry. So we did perform those sound and a little bit also behind the scene thingy. I remember, like, for me, the description was they're getting poisoned and they're dying because they're choking on their mucus. So I brought a little thing of honey with me and I was having a shot of honey to make sure that the sound would be kind of really gross. And after, a couple of takes, I was high on sugar. So I had to stop because, yeah. And I'll also add a little basket because that's the thing. When you do choking sound for 2 hours, even if you know that you're not choking, at some point the body thinks you are. So after a couple of takes, like I just felt like I was going to puke. So I had to stop for 5 minutes and then continue on. But that was fun. But that was fun. We did work on Prince of Persia, the reboot from Ubisoft, Spore Hero, Terra Online, Prince of Persia Forgotten Sin, Thief, actually, Project TL. And this is some of the most recent project that we worked on. Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy, Gotham Knights, Doom Eternal. If you heard, there was a metal choir used for the music of Doom Eternal. So we had a couple of voice talent used for the soundtrack of this video game. Meet Your Maker. It's not out yet, but I can talk about it. That's why it's there. It's a new game from Behavior Interactive. Dungeon and Dragon Dark Alliance, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Dead by Daylight. We first started on the Resident Evil chapter. We did a lot of the characters in there. Rainbow Six Siege Outbreak, Resident Evil. In Resident Evil, we actually, like one of the voice talent did actually scream, but the scream were not for the characters in the game. It was put in the wind. Like it was blended in the wind to make the wind kind of scarier. Dead Rising 4, again, Prince of Persia, Assassin's Creed 2. A little bit more information about some of the game we did for Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy. They actually hired 14 metal vocalists, vocal stunt performers for the game. We did actually more than 40 aliens and creature. Myself, I did 17. So quite a lot because I can do a lot of different voice techniques. So they actually use me a lot for the game. We did all the aliens and creatures sound conception, meaning that at the beginning of the project, they came to us and they had no real precise idea about which sound they wanted for their creature and their aliens. So we did work on that quite a lot. Part of what I did for that is I listened to probably 150 sci-fi movies just to listen to all the sound of the aliens, to look at their physic, to look at their facial features. And I probably did a document, like a 900-page document on classifying all the different alien species and the type of sound they're using to actually come up with ideas for this game. And also another thing that we also did the alien language conception. Basically, I received 80 pages of script in English. And the audio director, Steve Shukowski, wanted to have, like, each alien race, he wanted them to have their own unique language. So I had 80 pages of script in English, and depending on the voice technique that we were using for the different aliens, I actually built kind of an alphabet, and I did the translation from English to alien for each of the species. And it took like something like 3 months to do that. And after that, well, I had to train the voice talent that got the part for the casting. So it took another month of training to make sure that they were getting the sound and the pronunciation of each and every word. Just to make sure that when people, because it's actually, when you play the game, it's actually mostly on nowhere when you go there. And we want to make sure that, you know, if you go around nowhere, it was not just gibberish. Because gibberish, you know, in video game, it can be sometimes convincing, sometimes not at all. So we wanted to make sure that when you go there, you really had the feeling that the alien were really discussing among themselves. So again, that took a lot of work. And we did the voice direction for the recording session. Mostly because I was the one with the script, with the alien language and stuff, and we wanted to make sure that everyone got it right, and also that most of the sound that I was asking the voice talent to do, I was able to do myself. So sometime if they needed a little motivation or just a couple of ideas on how to do different sound, I was there just to do the sound and to help them through the recording session. We also did and are still working quite a lot on Dead by Daylight. They up to date. They hired 26 metal vocalists, vocal stunt performers to do survivors and killers. And this is a horror survival game. So as you can imagine, there are lots of extreme sound to record, screams of pain, choking sound, jump scare, coughing. And yeah, they decided to mostly go with vocal stunt performers for the game because we are trained to do that kind of sound. One of the characters that we did voice, apart from all the other, is called the Dredge. And it was really funny because when we recorded it, we were actually 6 voice talent in the same room. And we were recording the scream all at the same time. And I was doing the voice direction, and we filmed it. Unfortunately, I cannot share it, but we filmed it, and it was quite something to have 6 people screaming at the same time on different tone. That was absolutely wonderful to hear. Of course, if you're into screaming, that was wonderful. If you're not, well, that was horrifying. I'm going to show you, for maybe, because I don't know how much you people have seen from the Monster Factory. I'm just going to show our latest video real quick. It's short. It's going to give you a little idea of the type of sound that we're not only able to perform, but sustain for a good number of time. Hi, my name is Sébastien Croteau, president of the Monster Factory. Metal vocalists are truly vocal stuntwomen and stuntmen of voice acting. If you are a video game company or an audio company and you're looking for natural, distorted, or projected voices, we got you covered. Our monster creature voice talent can do and this. And also Our scream artists can do. And this. And also. Oh, I almost forgot. We can also do this. So if you're looking for voice talent for your zombies, alien, creature, monster, war cry, or any extreme sound in your project, contact us on our website. The Monster Factory, extreme voice talent for extreme sounds in movies and video games. Oh, damn. I need to... Yeah, okay. There you go. I know that's a lot of screaming. I know it's 10 a.m. for most of you guys. Sorry for that. It must been for some of you a hell of a wake-up call. But yeah, here it is. So I'm sure after seeing this, you're like, what? Ow? Why? Well, in order to understand a little bit more, we're going to need to make a little trip back in time because, as you can imagine, I didn't start like recently to do that. We have to, again, go back in time. So once upon a time there was, oh no, that's too far back. Once upon a time there was, no, that's too far back either. Ah, that's it. Once upon a time there was a young boy who loved bizarre voices and preferred villains to heroes. And that was me. I remember, and as far as I can remember, I was in love with, the villains, the bad guy, because for me they had the most interesting voices. Like all my friends were like rooting for the hero, Eamon, Optimus Prime, but I secretly, I was not. I really love all the bad guys. And if you remember, like in terms of weird voices, Cookie Monster, like for me, this is actually one of the first death metal vocalists ever. That was actually on national television in a family show. And it's quite funny because a lot of people, when they listen to metal vocalists, they actually refer to that kind of voice technique to the Cookie Monster technique. And they're not wrong, because when you listen to Cookie Monster, C is for cookie, that's good enough for me. C is for cookie. Is actually using a false chord, a bass voice technique, which is actually one of the voice techniques that metal vocalists actually use. It's just that we use it a little bit more, with a little bit more intensity. Of course, probably you all remember Commander Cobra and G.I. Joe. Do you remember his voice? Cobra! Let's attack! And actually, one of the voice actors doing that voice was actually also doing the voice of Starscream in the Transformer. They were all just screaming. Shockwave, there was Slimer. And also, for those who have seen the movie The Exorcist, I put it there mostly because when I was younger, I made the mistake to steal the VHS tape from my sister who had the movie. And I listened to the movie and I was freaked out. Partly because the movie, like, was absolutely horrifying back then, but also because of the voice. That actually not the young girl. I I happened to learn that many years after that it was a voice actress actually doing all the weird sound for the younger actress in the movie, but all the sound were so horrifying. I was like, okay, I need to put in there. So it's not a childhood favorites of mine, but it's among the sound that made me like, wow, this is so horrifying. So profession vocal stunt performers. So what do we actually do? Well, most of it is creature monster voice effects, extreme sound for human character, and voice match replacements. Voice match replacement, just to explain it real quick, it means that sometime actor, let's say for a movie, they don't want to scream when they record. Well, sometime people or company try to find a replacement that can actually scream like or have the voice like the actor in the movie, and they actually ask those voice talent to scream, and they actually replace the voice of the actor in the movie with the scream, what people sometimes refer and they say that scream artist. So that's what I mean by voice match replacement. And for creature monster voice effect, I'm sure that most of you, since you probably are all working in video games or voice talent in video games, you are aware that most of the sound nowadays used for that is still animal sound libraries. So sometimes they take a couple of different sound, a monkey, a bear, and they put it together, and this is what they use to create monster and creature voice effect, or something called dehumanizer or other software that actually modify the voice. So they use that, or sometimes both. Like they use creature sound, animal sound, and they mix it with dehumanizer to make it more weird. So usually it's done this way, but since a couple of years now, and actually, if we, and I know I'm gonna mess up his name. Is it Troy Lee Baker? No, not Troy Lee Baker. Help me out there, someone. Which is he's and then
D. Bradley Baker.
Oh, thank you, D. Bradley Baker. I knew I was going to mess his name. I'm sorry. But yeah, this is like he's been doing that for quite a while. So this is not something new. And like I said, for myself, I've been doing it in Montreal for almost 18 years. But for a lot of video game companies, this is quite new, using human voice to actually do creature and monster sound. This is not something that they usually rely on. They rely on animal sound libraries, but more and more video game companies tend to go the other way and use human voice for that kind of thing now. So usually what vocal stunt performance includes, well, we do a lot of projected voices with script, grenade, or any other stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of different terms for that. Onos, barks, grunts, wah-wahs. Sometimes they're scripted, sometimes it's not scripted. For me, I use the term environmental sound. That's the term we use here in Canada. We try to be unique. No, but still use onos and bark. We know what this means. But yeah, these usually is what is considered to be vocal stunt performance work. So, talking about the advantage of using male vocalists or trained vocal stunt performers, and I'm putting an emphasis on trained, because this is not something like when you're not trained for it, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but that can become quite vocally stressful for your voice. So we are professionally trained, studio trained, and people have years of experience. Contrary to animal sound libraries, we can act. And that is the limit of sound libraries. You're just putting sound together. That is not like the work of a real actor or a real voice actor. For me, there's something there in the performance of a human that cannot be achieved through just animal sound. And I'm sure you probably mostly agree with what I've just said, right? The sound we can do can be natural, realistic, and organic. Usually, and that's one of the incredible things, we need little or no post-processing. When we do the sound, it's fairly rare that they need to do any sound design on it because the source material is already really weird and distorted. And of course, one of the main thing is the vocal endurance that we have. So we, let's say, we're not affected the same way as people who are not trained into the art of vocal distortion. So when we have to do pain, death, choke sound, we can perform those sounds usually longer than voice actors who have not been trained into that. Most of the voice talent that we work with at the Monster Factory have between 5 to even 30 years of training in the art of screaming and guttural sound. Voice talent can use a vast variety of voice technique associated with mostly metal music or rock music that I can say, because there's a couple of vocal distortion types that can be directly linked to rock music and even to some other music as well. And they mostly consist of what we refer to as fry screaming. If you don't know what fry screaming is, it's actually something like "Yay!" something like this. False chord screaming, which mostly consists of something, and I'm trying to get away a little bit from the microphone because my microphone isn't good, and I know it must be like, it might be like this. So if we talk about false chord, it can be something like something like this. Inhale screaming, because if you don't know, we can actually produce sound when we are inhaling. So we can do something like this, which is kind of a zombie kind of sound. We can do something lower, which some people refer to as pig squeal, or we can inhale and produce higher sound, or so we can produce sound and vocal distortion by inhaling. We can also make the uvula vibrates. Not all of us, but some of us can do this. So if you say, what the hell is uvula vibration? Well, it's basically this. So, and I just discovered that fairly recently, in the last couple of years, because we actually used this voice technique to do an alien voice in Guardian of the Galaxy. And I actually didn't know what I was doing. I just found that the voice effect was cool and I could play with it to do a language. And actually I was discussing with a vocal coach, because we do exchange a lot in terms of teaching and knowledges within the Monster Factory. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, she wanted me to teach her and I was like, I don't know. So she asked me to come really close to the camera and to open my mouth and do the sound, and actually did. And we were actually could see the uvula doing like this. I was like, oh my God, like I'm uvulating. so yeah, this is uvula vibration. We can also do throat singing. Because again, you know, like I explained a little bit at the beginning, throat singing can actually be quite close to some of the voice technique we use in rock and metal. So there's also different kind of throat singing. You have the Tibetan throat singing, which is usually more relaxed. There's the Tuva and the Mongolian throat singing, which is usually a little bit more laryngeal compression used and a little bit higher. So, and you can actually produce overtone with the tongue. And there's other stuff we don't know about, because there's been, you know, quite a few studies about extreme voices and metal vocalists, but there's not enough data to actually be able to have, you know, the repertoire of all the things that we use in extreme voices. So that's why I'm saying like there's other stuff we don't know about, basically because there's still a little bit a lack of data. For me, like if one day we can examine 1,000 metal vocalists, maybe we'll be able to identify more clearly everything that we can use, because sometimes it differs from one singer to another. So yeah, and extreme vocal coach among us. I've trained hundreds and hundreds of singers and voice actor over the years. Like I said, for me, I've started 15 years ago, and I've trained quite a bunch of people since then. When I was talking about little or no post-processing, well, our natural distorted voice rarely need any kind of processing. And that's also one of the things, like when people use software modification, like, and you can hear that in a lot of movies, like the voice all sound kind of the same, right? They're always that computer voice effect that people use with monster or with villains. And, at some point it becomes like, I'm sure that there's place for something else, in terms of sound. Sometime when we're recording, we can also do different layers of sound, and that happens sometime during recording session. So let's say we mix, a voice, a high-pitched voice like, and then we can mix a low one like, and usually we have to do both voice technique one after the other, especially when we do environmental sound, attack sound. If we wait until we complete the whole sequence of variation, like we won't remember like all the variation we did. So usually we have to do them like one right after the other. But this is something that we are used to. And at the end of the day, and this is one of the big arguments for me when I meet video game companies, is we actually save time for sound designers and people in audio, mostly because, and remember what I was saying about creature and monster sound coming from animal sound libraries, the time it takes to mix all the different sound and make something cool, and then make sure that all those sound fit on the video animation, sometimes that they need, or the cutscenes and everything, it takes a while to do that. So, and this is what most people that I've worked with said to us, like, okay, yeah, we need to pay for voice actor, yes, but at the end of the day, if you look at all the work that they don't have to do because of what we do, like this is a huge advantage for them, and of course for us as well. I was talking about vocal endurance. Well, our training, and I would say our extensive training, makes it possible to scream up to 4 hours without sustaining damage to our voice. And I'm saying damage, I'm not saying we're not susceptible to vocal stress. We are, but it takes much time for vocal stress to get a hold of our voice, because we do have the training for it. We can go through all the recording session without having to reschedule. I'm sure you've heard, or it happened to you, that the recording session was too stressful for your voice and you had to reschedule. Well, I can say that in the last 18 years that we've been doing that, it never happened. Like, never, ever. We did have to reschedule once, but the voice talent got hit by a car. And the thing is, he was in the studio a week after with, the crutches, and he did record like 3 hours. Like, this guy is a real trooper. But that never happened to us. We never had to reschedule because the recording session was too vocally stressful for us. And if you look at what we do in terms of being a metal vocalist / vocal stunt performers, if you look at the metal vocalist side of things, most of those people, they tour. And when they tour a couple of months, a year, and they are most of the time required to scream every day for 25, 30 show. So it's a lot. It's a lot of screaming in a year. So you can imagine the level of training it takes to be able to achieve that. So metal vocalists are fairly aware of vocal stress. They're fairly aware of vocal health. because they need to preserve their voice for all that streaming. So usually we're fairly knowledgeable about that kind of thing. And we, as I was saying, we can use different voice technique during the same recording session. So the challenges of vocal stunt work and extreme sound in video game. This comes from a recording session that we had at IDOS Montreal, and when we were doing the voices for Guardian of the Galaxy. That was actually the first time I was using a face cam, so I was having fun with it. But when you look at the actual little screen, it's really something to see like your face that close. Like it's not a pretty sight. I was like, oh my god, like I have stuff on my nose. I see my wrinkles and like so close. And I was using a microphone, and that's one of the things that I discovered when doing that. You know that it's called, I don't remember, the DSP-5, the little microphone that looks like a fish from, really below the ocean. We were using that to record, and that was actually amazing because most of the time when we do record for creature and monster sound or even human characters, I tend to use my body a lot. Like when I need to run, of course, I make sure that the fabric of my sweater and stuff, we cannot hear it in the microphone, but I do tend to move a lot and use my body a lot. And with that microphone, like we could do all the move the creature and the monster were doing in the video animation. And that was amazing because we could really embody what they were doing and move, and everything was like going in the microphone. So of course we were really mindful about our feet because the movement of our feet could go into that microphone because it was really sensitive. But apart from that, like being able to move like the monster and the creature, that was absolutely amazing. So when I record nowadays, monster and creature sound, and I'm in front of the microphone and I cannot move, I remember, those recording sessions, because that was just incredible. So a little bit about extreme voices. Well, for me, and I say it like this, extreme voices in video game are like the Olympics of the human voice. It's not something that is easy. It's something that requires a lot of training, and you need to have a level of training that goes with the challenge that you will encounter doing vocal stunt work and extreme voices. You probably, and I know that this is actually from the Hollywood Reporter, you're probably all aware that a couple of months ago, there were a series of articles about vocal stress in video game, and actually voice actors and voice actresses saying, well, performing death screams, zombie wails, battle war, like it takes a toll on our voices, and with reason. So there was a lot of talk about that. And this basically came from a survey that was done by ACTRA Toronto in Canada. And the key finding of this survey, and it was conducted, just a little bit more information, in June 2021, and approximately 264 voice talent actually answer the survey. So that's quite a lot of voice talent here in Canada, and the result were going with what the fact that it's difficult to do. Like if you look at the statistics, 74% said they had to perform a vocal stunt work in their recording session. 38%, almost half, said that they experience vocal fatigue very often or almost always during the recording session. And 19% said that they needed a time to recover after a recording session. 42% said that the recovery take 2 or more days. And that can be a problem. Of course, if most of your voice talent and you're doing a video game voiceover, like if you have to cancel a gig because you did not recover from a recording session, well, it's a problem because you're not making money, and this can be quite stressful for you, right? And 27% said that they consider turning down a recording session because of the challenges of recording vocal stunt work. And I was not surprised. Like, I was like, yeah, because I've experienced it a bit myself. And even with the level of training I have, I know it can be quite challenging. So I was like, yeah, this is really accurate. And even in one of the article, there was someone saying that a voice director once told me that 50% was a rough estimate of actors who can get through a session. It's either the challenge of their voice that can make it, or the challenge or their voice that can make it true. I was like, wow, like that much. And I'm a little bit aware of that since, of course, I'm discussing with audio directors and with voice director when I work with them, and I didn't know that they might have they're pardon my French. I didn't know there is that many recording session that sometimes get a cancel or reschedule because of that. I was like, wow, this is a lot. One good thing, because of course they did the polls, the survey, and their key recommendation, they were actually saying like, well, for vocal stunt work and for recording session, you should at least have a 10-minute breaks after each hour. A video game should hire a vocal stunt coach for actors to prepare them for that kind of recording session. Session should be limited to 2 hours. Session also should be spread out 48 hours apart, meaning that if you go on Monday to record for 2 hours, well, you have to wait 48 hours before you are rescheduled to do another recording session. And they recommend that a voice director have received training to make sure that they are aware of health issues for regarding the voice talent that actually perform in the recording session. And just to tell you, I'm all for that. Like for untrained people or people that are not as trained as some of us, this is perfect. That's the kind of thing that I'm completely agree. But this also presents challenges for the video game company in terms of, for example, scheduling. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Yeah, Troy. Okay, I'm looking at you, Troy. You're my go-to guy. I have two people. I see two people, and I base what I present on your reaction, guys. So please bear with me. Because there's a whole lot more scheduling. If you follow those recommendations, it's a lot more organization for, and of course, when vocal health is the issue, of course, video game companies should do everything in their power to accommodate the voice talent, but for them, it means a whole lot more scheduling, a whole lot more time, a whole lot more planning than, when they have people that can actually perform those sounds for 3-4 hours in a row. Well, so I'm going to leave it at that. So the key challenges of vocal stunt work in voice acting. There's a couple of, I just want to list a few. And there's a few surprising ones. Basically, the lack of knowledge about effects of vocal stress, vocal distortion, and vocal anatomy among voice actors. And like I said, I've trained a lot of voice talent, voice actors and actresses over the years, and I'm training them now at the National Institute of Sound and Image. And I'm training people who, let's say, had a training in theater, in performance art. And what they tell me is that they basically had no lesson about vocal anatomy or vocal distortion or projected voices. And I'm always amazed. I'm like, wow, so this is your instrument? And okay, where the long, the thong the larynx and, you know, your teeth are, but that's basically it. Like they have a very limited knowledge for most of the people I train. And I find that a little bit disconcerting because this is your instrument. At least you should know a little bit more about it. Sometimes it's a lack of specific training, warm-up techniques, and vocal practice routine. Like people don't know what precisely to do in vocal stunt work, how to trigger vocal distortion safely, how to do breathing exercises. Sometimes they have a few that they learn here and there, but nothing really specifically for that kind of thing. Sometimes even the existing workshop about vocal stunt work, they are a little bit too generic, and they do not offer a personalized assessment of each participant. And I'll give a little bit more detail about that. There's also a lack of scientific research or on the impact of extreme sound and vocal stunt work on voice actor. You know, the knowledge that we have in the voice acting community about extreme sound and vocal stunt work, like the scientific knowledge, we don't have a lot. It's still something that we collectively need to explore. So for me, these are the key challenges. So I'm going to go into a little bit more precision about existing workshop lectures about extreme sound and vocal stunt work. And just to tell you, I'm not going to tell you because I've seen a couple. I know people who actually did receive training about vocal stunt work. And I don't want to name any name. Like for me, this is not what's important. It's what I take from what I've seen or what I heard directly from those people is that sometime, and yeah, for me, I have the Zoom thing on my presentation. I just want to make sure that, oh yeah, okay. So sometime there is almost none or very too few specific warm-up techniques for and or ways to safely engage vocal distortion. You know, if your warm-up consists of breathing exercises, well, it's good, but it's clearly not enough when we're talking about vocal distortion. If your warm-up routine consists of lip trill or humming for a few minutes, of course, this is warm-up, but this is not specific warm-up that can help you sustain safe vocal distortion. Yeah. Usually there are limited explanation on vocal anatomy and the mechanism involved in vocal distortion. Some that I've seen are really precise about that. And I think it's a good thing to actually, that people learn that they can actually do vocal distortion with more than only their vocal cords or false vocal cord, what we call ventricular folds. There's a lot of different things that we can actually use and mix together. And I do believe that when you want to do some stuff you want to do some vocal stunt work, well, this is something that that is important to know. But again, that's some that I've seen have limited explanation on it. Sometimes they are lecturing on subject without official credit. I'm going to give you an example. If I were to give you a lecture about audiobook, like if I have not done any, I don't know why I should be lecturing you about that, but I've seen that. Training format, large group, does not allow to evaluate the needs of each participant or provide a tailor-made vocal practice routine and warm-up. Like, even if we do give you warm-up, sometimes we don't know if it's made for your voice. Every voice is unique. Every voice is different. And you know, sometimes when we, in a large group of people, it's really difficult to assess the voice of the person you're working with because you are mostly lecturing. And for me, that can be a problem, especially if you give that person vocal warm-ups that involve vocal distortion. You don't know the extent to which extent that person can go. You don't know if it's going to be effective. And, throughout the years in doing vocal coaching with one-on-one, I know that sometimes you need to adjust things. Like you hear a sound and you can say, okay, your larynx is a little bit too high, try to relax and do this. Like there's a lot of things that you get when you assess the voice. But the thing is, when people have 10, 20 people in that kind of format, it can be hard to do that. And I do believe this is, a good part of being a vocal coach. Sometimes, from what I've seen, marketing tactics designed to make you think that it's easy. It's not. So if you see something and it say, well, come with us, you're gonna learn how to scream. It's not. And sometimes I have the feeling that, it seems that it gives the impression that it can be easy, which is not. You can understand it, but understanding part and practicing it are two different things. And sometimes, from what I've seen, there's even like what I consider, and I know maybe it's a big of a word, false claim, misinformation, scientific inaccuracies. The worst that I've seen is that I've seen someone posted something after like a 2-4 hour workshop, and he was like, yeah, those people are ready to scream. I was like, really? Like 4 hours of workshop makes you able and ready to scream for 2 hours in a video game? I don't think so. Like for me, it was probably the most irresponsible thing I've seen, because this is not accurate. It's like a 4-hour workshop.
Escúchame, ahí me puse, o sea.
Oh, hello. Can you close down your microphone, please? Thank you. Hello, mi amor. And yeah, for me, that was a little bit shocking, because like I was going to say, a 4-hour workshop with Buzz Aldrin doesn't make you an astronaut, right? And for me, I was like, no, it takes a little bit more than that. Like when I was saying that extreme voice work in video game or like the Olympics, like 4 hours of training is not quite training for the Olympics, right? It takes a lot more than that to actually claim that these people are ready to scream for hours. So for me, I was like, wow, this is absolutely responsible. No distinction between vocal distortion and vocal pain. Like I've seen people saying like, as soon as you feel discomfort, stop. And for me, when you know vocal distortion, and when you learn it, actually you know that there's a little bit of discomfort taking place in the learning process, mostly because we're training muscles sometimes to perform unusual tasks with our with the voice, sometimes that people are not trained to do. And the thing is, it's like when you go to the gym and you train, like sometimes the muscle are going to be sore. I'm not talking about pain. I'm talking about like, like, oh, I trained yesterday, like, ooh, good training, my muscle feels sore. Well, sometimes that's the thing. Training for vocal distortion sometimes involves discomfort. I remember when I started to do throat singing, I was actually coughing when I was actually trying to do the Mongolian Tuvan thing. Mostly because when you know a little bit about the way we use usually ventricular folds and false vocal cord, well, when we cough, some of the sound comes directly from the false vocal cord, like the kind of distortion you hear. So when you are actually triggering the false vocal cord, well, sometimes the brain is like, what are you doing? You are not coughing? Like, I'm going to make you cough, because usually you use those for coughing. So let's go, cough. So, and every metal vocal coach I work with would tell you that discomfort is part of learning vocal distortion. And it's really different from pain. I'm not talking about pain. I'm talking about discomfort, which is different. And I've seen people spreading inaccurate information about the role of the diaphragm. Just to tell you, it might be a shock to you, but when people say, hey, use your diaphragm to project, we're not using the diaphragm to project. Like the diaphragm is contracting when we are contracting when we are inhaling. it contracts, therefore the air gets in, and when we are projecting, it relaxes. So it's in a passive mode. So you cannot say use your diaphragm to project. You cannot use a muscle that is actually passive as a source of support. There's other muscle that are doing that kind of support, not the diaphragm. And I've seen presentation, and it's actually quite common for, especially in what I call singing circles. This is something that circulate like you use diaphragm, push with your diaphragm, but it's actually not the diaphragm. So for me, it's like, especially when you're giving lectures or workshop about vocal stunt work in anatomy, like not getting that part right is a little bit problematic for me. And yeah, I'm just coming back to that ready to scream after 2-4 hour workshop. You know, for me, the worst thing about that, it gives a false sense of security to the voice actors and actresses. And that can be quite dangerous. Like if you think after that, you're ready to go to the Olympic of extreme voices and perform, and you think you're good to go, like you're all pumped up. Yeah, I'm going to be able to do it. What happens if you don't and you hurt yourself during the recording session? Well, the damage can be permanent. So for me, one of the things that I do when I teach voice talent is I try to avoid that at all costs, giving them a false sense of security. And yeah, I was talking about, coaching, and I love that definition. Set of training methods that focus on the needs of specific individual. And I'm missing a part because of the screen of Zoom. I think it's N couple with close observation of their performance and learning activities leading to feedback regarding how they can further enhance their performance. And this is one of the issues that I have about vocal coach, is that sometimes they're doing more lecture than they're actually doing vocal coaching. They do not take the time to assess your voice. They do not take the time to give you feedback. They're just talking about vocal stunt work or vocal distortion. And I think it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think there's something missing. And the assessment part is really important, individually speaking, because most of what I see is usually like groups of 10, 20. And again, it's okay to gain basic knowledge of vocal stunt work and vocal distortion. But what's missing is an important part, making sure that everything that we tell you, you can actually do, or you know how to do them. So for me, the assessment part is really important. So when I see what I see, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of lecture going on, but there's not a lot of coaching going on because of that. When I was talking about the lack of scientific research on the impact of extreme sound and vocal stunt work among voice actors, there's actually one study. It's really recent. It's in October 2022. It's listening to video game of voice, a call for action for research into vocal health of video game voice actor by Patrick. I don't know, it's Aiken. I do think, because again, the screen is blocking a part of the work. And what this research is actually saying is that there's limited evidence of literature specific to the voices and vocal health of video game voice talent. And of course, when we don't know about something, it's for me a problem, especially the impact on something such as vocal stunt work among voice talent. So when I read that study, I was like, yeah, they're absolutely right. And for the whole community, that is an issue. That is a problem. So if there's a lack of scientific studies in voice acting, does this mean that there is no research about the effects of extreme sound on vocal health? I'm gonna let Michael Scott answer.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So no, we do have medical studies about vocal distortion and vocal health. The guy you're seeing in the picture is actually Enrico De Lorenzo, the death metal vocalist for the band Idiot's Divinity. But the thing is also an ENT, what sometimes people call the throat doctor. And he has been doing research for the last 14 years on extreme voices in music, but still on extreme voices and vocal health. And there's been one study in particular that is really recent. It's called Extreme Vocal, a retrospective longitudinal study of vocal health in 20 professional singers, performers, and teaching rough vocal effects. So it was, there's a couple of people that actually did that research. And the thing with that research that is really amazing, because I know a lot of people, you know, when they talk about metal vocalists and rock singers, you know, they all think, oh my God, we damage our voices, you know, well, like I've been doing it for 33 years, and I do believe that my voice is quite normal, right? But a lot of people still think that it can be damaging, and it can be damaging. Like, it's partly real. But the thing, what they did with that study is that they followed 20 professional singers over a period of 14 years to actually be able to measure the effect of vocal distortion and extreme vocals on their vocal health. And I find the conclusion quite interesting. I'm gonna let you read it for yourself because it's partly blocked because of the Zoom thing. But the thing is, yeah, I can see like kind of the end, but it's like it can be performed to engage, again, you know, I miss a bit, but in a healthy manner if performed with correct vocal technique. So it's possible. And there's been, again, you know, many studies, again, not that much, like I said at the beginning, but there's been many studies about extreme vocals and extreme voices, mostly around rock and metal vocalists. And again, this one is something in particular. Most of the other one consist about regarding or analyzing the different mechanism involved in vocal distortion. Sometimes they do a sound analysis, because if you don't know, like the Tibetan or the Tuvan throat singer, when we use, let's say, false vocal cord distortion, we are producing a subharmonic, meaning below the fundamental tone, we are producing something else. And that's why a lot of people, when they listen to a big death metal voice, they're like, oh my God, this guy is singing low. We're not. We're actually using a trick. It's the vibration mode of the false vocal cord that actually produce that kind of thing. So there have been a few medical and scientific studies about that. But yeah, those studies, and this one in particular, shows that when it's performed the right way, it can be sustainable. And this is actually, I'm going to show you real quick, a short clip. I was telling you about Enrico, the ENT in Italy. I'm just going to show you real quick. He did actually a laryngoscopy while performing a death metal song. Do not try this at home. Okay, I think that's quite enough. Like I said, don't try this at home. But Enrico is one of I'm just happy to work with this guy, and for me is one of the best in the field of teaching vocal distortion, because of the extent of his research in this field, but also it's because he's actually practicing it. And for me, that is also like when people talk about vocal distortion and they're teaching about it, but they cannot perform the sound that they are actually teaching about. Sometimes I'm like, I'd rather have someone that is actually able to perform the sound that he wants you to do, right? So if you want to do vocal stunt work, who should you train with? And I'm not saying you should train necessarily with metal vocalists, because people who are actually metal vocalists, sometimes they are really good at doing it, but they are really bad at teaching it. Like in any field, if you go on YouTube and you try to find a good video about something, well, the cream rarely rise on the top. Like sometimes the most knowledgeable one are not the one you see on YouTube, or not the most popular one. Like I know a lot of people would say like, oh, this metal vocalist is amazing, like I want to learn from him. But popularity doesn't make you a teacher, right? So I know a lot of people, sometimes they go this and I'm like, well, maybe you should choose someone else. But I'm asking you the question, like for me, with everything I've said, I think that if you do want to work in something specific and learn about vocal stunt work, well, you have to train or to do vocal coaching with someone that can tell you about vocal anatomy, that can actually do the personalized assessment, which is again an important part of coaching, and is able to perform most of the sound that it's telling you about. We're almost at the end. Don't worry. If you have any question, I'm going to leave a few minutes, because I know I've been speaking for an hour and 16 minutes. So again, thank you for not leaving and not being distressed about the metal stuff or the throat camera you've just seen. So I'll be giving a couple of workshops with the thanks to the ALP network. So just to give you a short summary of the upcoming workshop, we're going to talk about monster and creature sound for video game, the art of environmental sound, and I'm going to do an introduction to vocal distortion and vocal stunt work. Maybe a little bit more detail about those workshops. So for the monster and creature sound for video game, we're going to talk about monster and creature typification and voice technique, meaning that for different kind of monster, there's a different kind of voice that usually goes with that. You have to be knowledgeable about that, especially when you want to do audition for those type of monster. Let's say that you are auditioning for a zombie video game and you want to do zombie voice. Well, I could tell you something, like if you do, oh, nowadays it's no longer the sound, the sound of zombies. It was in the 50s and the 60s, but nowadays it's more something like, oh, or oh, something like this that works in terms of zombies. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how the physical elements can influence the voice design. Like there's a lot of things that you can get from the visual of the character that can help you come up with an actual better sound or more accurate sound for those monster and creatures specifically. And we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of a do's and don't of a monster voice reel. And of course, I'm going to leave time to answer all your questions, because I'm sure people are going to have a lot. So we're going to leave time for that. Environmental sound, onos and grunts for video games. So what to do before a recording session, the vocal stress level in the different environmental sound, how to use body movements when you're recording, the description of the most common type of environmental sound, and then something particular in video game when we get to do those sound, like we have to do a lot of variation. And something like that can be quite challenging. I'm sure some of you have, lived that, oh my God, I need to do 15 to 20 variation of this attack. So how do I come up with real variation? Well, there's actually some trick that you can use to be able to perform those variation efficiently and quickly. And last, yes, we're going to do something about vocal distortion and vocal stunt work. So we're going to talk about a lot of myths and legends surrounding vocal distortion, vocal anatomy, the different types of vocal distortion, how to establish a warm-up and vocal practice routine. We're going to talk about vocal health and sustainability, and we're going to talk a little bit about the medical and scientific studies on vocal distortion. And again, I'm going to leave time to work with some people I'm gonna ask them sometime to perform some sound, but just to tell you, I'm not usually. I don't ask to do stuff that I know people won't be able to or are not properly warmed up for. So we're gonna work a little stuff with our voices for those who will attend, but I never go to the extreme with people because I know that when you don't have a actual warm up routine, like I don't want people to go there. Do you have any question for me? And now maybe Mayan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm
You're
here.
there. You didn't fall asleep. Thank you.
No, Of course not. It was so interesting. I am
I'm-
always watching and waiting.
No problem. I'm gonna stop sharing now. I'm gonna go back to to sing all. Oh yeah, wow. So many people now. Hello. Oof. I was only seeing like 2 people. I was like, oh no. So it's good to see you all. So I hope you enjoy the presentation. So if you have any question for me now, fire away. I'm ready for. Maybe Mayan, if I don't know if you've
We have-
established a
Yeah, we have
protocol.
someone, Matt Silver. Go ahead and unmute.
Hey, thank you so much. This is so informational. I appreciate everything. So, question for someone who is trained in this area. They're ready to start taking on this kind of work. How do you typically see people like marketing themselves as to potential video game companies as being capable of doing this? Is it demos? Is it demos for each of those 3 categories that you mentioned? What's the typical approach?
For me, usually, if you can have a demo reel as complete as possible in terms of the different kind of voice effect you can do, but also, and this is something I will talk in one of the workshops, but you're asking me a question, and I'll tell you now, it's really important that the sound that you will put on the demo, you are able to sustain them. Because a lot of people I know, sometimes they put like really weird sound on their demo, but the thing is, they're not able to sustain that for 2 hours or 3 hours. So you have to be careful about that and make sure that the sound you're recording, you can actually perform. Another thing, do what I call a sound script scenario, meaning that, because for some people it's just like they do, right? Okay, well, good. But I want to hear that you can perform different action when that. So you can imagine a scenario like, okay, you are an ogre, on the side of a campfire, just, preparing his weapon for the fight. So that is actually idle, right? So you have to do a sound for that. And then after that, you see a potential victim detection sound. And then you start running after them, running sound, and then you are jumping on them and killing them. So each of the different action, it has to be distinctive and clear. Because I have to know, like if you were to send me a demo, I want to know not only if you can do cool sound, I want to know if you're knowledgeable and can use that voice technique to do the different action that are required for that type of thing.
Thank you. That's awesome.
No problem. My pleasure.
We have some questions in the chat, so I'm just going to read them.
Yeah, please do, because I'm illiterate. I'm joking.
Do you intend to extend the classes you offer online to be more available going forward? I would love to work with you for some coaching. So I guess maybe where can people reach out to you?
Most definitely through the Monster Factory website. Like I said, there's going to be some workshop with the Alp network, but for a more personalized approach. And like I said, for me, coaching, it's not only about imparting knowledge to all of you. It's actually assessing your voice, knowing what you are capable to do, knowing the extent of the limit of what you can do. And this usually takes a little bit more time, of course. But yeah, most definitely, if you reach out through the Monster Factory website, we can definitely book something and really work on what you can do and what is the best warm up and establish a routine for what you can do specifically and how to get you like in the game, all right, for vocal stunt work.
Awesome. And then is there a directory of great or accredited distortion coaches? Maybe something that existing or?
Yeah, the thing is, I'm again, don't go on YouTube and go do best metal vocal coach. Sometime you know, it's gonna just go by the most popular, and sometime again, the most popular video are not the most accurate. I have the luxury to work with sometimes people that are unknown, in the sense they are not huge on YouTube or stuff like that. But for me, they are actually the most knowledgeable in the field of vocal distortion. So if you do want to have a list of those people, I don't have a problem. Just write directly to me or through our website, and I'll gladly provide a list of those people. But because again, don't go on TikTok or on on YouTube. Don't look at the most viewed video on TikTok. It's usually not a sign of being knowledgeable, other than knowing how to film a reel and put it there. I'm joking. There's a lot of interesting stuff on TikTok. But yeah, and I'll gladly provide a list of people that I know that are knowledgeable, that can train you for that thing specifically.
Awesome. And then I did put the links to the Monster Factory website and the workshops in the chat if you guys like to check that out. We do have another question. Do you also use your sense of musical knowledge along with your vocal training for your projects?
I do a little bit in terms of training. You know, sometime, just to give you an example, sometimes we do sing, because that's the thing with also vocal stunt work. Depending on what you do, it is mostly projected voices, right? So it's not a talking level of doing things. It's closer to a singing level of doing things, because when you listen to metal vocalists doing yeah or ah, what you perform in terms of vocal stunt work when you do ah, is closer to a singing level. So we do have singing exercises, musical one, that we can actually do different scale. And again, it all depends on where you are with your voice. Sometimes we just don't touch that because it's just too soon. But sometimes we do have to do scales, and that's one of the things where when you are really well trained in vocal distortion is an on and off switch that you can actually do. Yeah, it's a switch that you just trigger on and off for any kind of vocal distortion. So you can practice that with different scale. So we could say that there's something that is closely related to singing with that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I can say about that for the moment.
Awesome. Is there any other questions, either in chat or you can unmute to ask?
Monster or Pageo strikes me as funny. Yes, but we do those sometimes. Like, you know, again, sometimes we are required to sing while doing vocal distortion. That happen in a couple of projects that we worked on. So of course, and that's one of the things that sometimes even in the metal community, sometimes people like they want to learn vocal distortion, but they forget that vocal distortion is an add-on on your natural voice, and they forget to train their natural voice. So they want to learn about vocal distortion, but they forget about, hey, you know, you still need to be a good singer in order to be a good rock or metal vocalist, because behind it is your voice, and you need to be good with that, right? I saw and again, you know, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to the chat.
Yeah, so Jessica says, is there a challenge for you as a vocal coach teaching someone these extreme vocal techniques via the internet when you aren't physically in the room with the talent to see how they are breathing or holding their body?
That's one of the problems that I do have with that kind of thing through Zoom or Skype, is that as a vocal coach, we are missing a lot of information. Usually I ask people to stand, to see their posture. And the thing is, with the pandemic, like, since our live, there's only thing but Zoom. There's nothing else but Zoom, I'm sorry. Some of the vocal coaches have adapted quite well to this challenge, and we've learned a couple of tricks to adapt to how we can actually teach extreme voices through something like Zoom. But I'm going to be honest with you, we're still missing parts and bits of information when we are doing that. And even sometime, and that is the worst thing, sometime when we ask people to perform some sound, Zoom is cutting the sound. Like, I'm sure it happens to you. And like, how do you want to evaluate someone when Zoom is cutting the sound off that we need to listen to that sound to know what the person is doing? So of course it is challenging, but it's not impossible. Like, again, since the beginning of the pandemic, most of the vocal coaches I know have transitioned from in person. Like, if you're in Montreal or if you're in the city, like, I have a Mary Zimmer, which is an amazing vocal coach in Las Vegas. If you happen to be in Las Vegas, well, there's always the in-person training that is possible. So for me, it's always best. This is like being able to be face-to-face to see how the people is breathing, how is using the muscle contraction, because that's another thing. In order to perform loud sound, the muscle contraction has to be appropriate. And sometimes you miss that, because you only see that part of the body. And even to see the muscle contraction, you would have to ask someone to raise his shirt and actually look at the muscle contraction, which is quite uncomfortable through Zoom or something like that. So yeah, being in person is for me the ultimate experience in terms of vocal coaching. But we've learned a little bit more to adapt to Zoom voice lessons.
Awesome. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, it's different. Most definitely, especially when the sound is cutting and you're like, what are you doing? Can you send it through me through Messenger? So sometimes people like record the sound on Messenger, they send it to me, I can listen to the sound on Messenger. And yeah, we've learned a couple of tricks to kind of go around the problem that we have sometimes with Zoom.
That's actually a setting that you can turn off now, just so you know. They have a better audio quality version. You can turn it off now. So.
They do have, but sometimes it's on sometimes we forget. So we find like, oh, there's the option. And sometimes on the other side that people have, so but yeah, definitely, this is something like they had to develop that, because now Zoom was like not really less popular, let's say, before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hits and like, boom, like everybody's on Zoom. So most definitely.
Morla has a question.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
This is all very exciting. I have a follow-up question to about the demos. So would you say that it's more beneficial to have that kind of customized demo that you were describing earlier over in-game content for creatures that you've already done that have been in?
Well, if you do have material from that you've done, and that material is not sound designed to hell, I would say yes, because sometimes it is heavily sound design. So this would not be an accurate way to showcase what you do, because there's all this bunch of sound design. So of course, if you do have that and it's not sound design like heavily, of course you can actually use that. But for me, like when I receive demo or stuff or reel from voice talents, to consider them for voice talent for the Monster Factory, because we do act as a talent agency as well, I'm always like want to listen to again, pardon my French, unaltered. I want to listen what they can do with their voice, with no filter, with no effect, with nothing. For me, this is where I'm like, okay, this is what you can do. Because if you put voice effect, if you put delays on everything, for me, like I'm personally, I'm not interested in that. I really want to know what you can do with your voice. So again, if you do have that material, you can use it. But it's best to be able to showcase all your ability, like with a couple of different, again, sound script scenario that you can build for different character to showcase your capacity to do a voice technique and be able to perform different action with that voice technique.
Mm-hmm. Maybe would it be cool also, just an idea, like to have like the audition for that game in like a soundscape and then follow it up with the in-game, so you have the cleaner and then also the
different,
like, kind of like going back and forth between like audition and then the thing, so that it's like
the thing. It depends on the information from the casting call. If they're really specific about what they're looking in terms of voices, you know, to showcase other stuff, it might not be appropriate, right? They when they are, and sometimes they're not. And as you know, it's like casting call, we want zombies. That's it. And they're not accurate about exactly what the voice technique or the sound that they want zombies. Well, then, you know, you can propose other things. But when they are, rarely, but when they are really accurate, like, I don't think that proposing something else might help. It's really like, they're asking for this, like, do this to the best of your abilities and play that thing, you know? I hope it answered your question. Thank you.
All right. I think that is it.
Yeah, you know, it's been an hour and a half. You people must be so tired of listening to me. To now it's like, God damn, this guy talks a lot. I do. I'm sorry.
Everyone's thankful for the information that you dropped today, so that's what I'm seeing in the chat, so it's true.
Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for taking your Sunday morning to spend time with me. It's been a blast. Like, I really had fun, like, preparing the Canva presentation. I know, like, but for those people who use Canva, they know it's quite a lot of time to prepare that. I was just like, and I will have a Canva presentation and some visual stuff for the other workshop, because I do think it helps. You know, just looking at my face for an hour and a half, I know it's going to be boring. So I usually have help from Canva to make it more enjoyable for all of you. But again, I want to thank the Help Network. You know, I had a blast meeting them for the first time in Game SoundCon in Los Angeles a few months ago, and from there, like, I remember we started to discuss, and then we became almost instant buddy with all the people that I met there. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with all of you, and thank you again, all of you, for, you know, taking the time to listen the ramblings of a vocal stunt performer.
Yes, thank you. For anyone who does need to reference, this video will be available to everyone on YouTube sometime this week. But for the other workshops, that's going to be for the students only. So if you're interested in that information, please sign up. But that's available on our website, helpacademy.com. Thank you, Sebastian, for your hard work. And
just to say, this is actually a real background, because I'm sure people like, my God, he has so many movies. Well, a part of being a creature monster voice talent is to actually listen to movies, listen to the different voice and sound they're using, playing video games, to listen to what they're actually keeping in terms of the different monster. So yeah, this is not a false background. It's actually real. And it's worse than that. It goes all around this place. So yeah. Okay. I'm going to go now.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day.